everything, and technology is such a, like, the first thing I do when I introduce it is like, just so we're talking technology, but please know that I'm not websites. Like, I'm colorblind. You do not want me doing graphical work, like, unless you really love the color brown, because that's
Yeah.
where it's gonna end up for
Yeah.
me. Like, and
Welcome to the Business Ownership Podcast, brought to you by Awareness Strategies, helping you navigate the waters between entrepreneurship and ownership. Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedlick, and I'm super glad that you're here with us today because I'm here with my most amazing guest, Jack. Jack, thank you so much for being here with us today.
yeah, thanks for having me. Oh, no, my pleasure. That's the appropriate response. On that on an NPR
You can
show.
answer any way your heart desires.
All right, sounds
So give
good.
everybody a highlight of who you are and what you do for business.
Uh, okay, so the who I am, I'll let you know when I figure it out. But
Let's go
because
with
of that
Jack. Let's
because of
start with
that
Jack.
awkwardness, because of that awkwardness, I am a newly minted fractional CIO or virtual CIO. And that was something that I was doing but didn't know I was doing. And so as soon as somebody introduced the idea of fractional work to me, I was like, this totally makes sense. And so it was a fractional CFO, and I said, I want you to know I'm just stealing your program, and I'm going to make a couple tweaks for the technology world. And for the last year and a half, I've been converting from what's called a traditional MSP technology company to the fractional model.
Very fun. That sounds awesome. So let's back up the bus just a little bit. And how did you get into kind of technology and that high level, like I type thinking in the first place?
So that comes from everything in my past that's not related to technology. And the whole me having a technology company is actually, and if anybody is hopefully listening from the organization that I left, I started a technology company on a lie. So I was working in the camping industry. I've always grown up like building most fundamental, just like building computers and interested in technology. But I went to Indiana University to be a high school social studies teacher. And I worked in the camping industry since I was 15. So I started off as like a dishwasher and a counselor in training. And one of the reasons I'm fascinated to be on there is because in the camping industry at a radio station. So I'm always fascinated with media from that. But I digress. So then I professionally worked in the camping industry through my 20s. Part of that was working with corporate facilitation as well as kids. So that's where I learned methods of learning through school. I learned how to ask questions in the camping industry, but in the nonprofit world that I was in, I knew more about technology than anybody else. So that meant I was other duties as assigned and was in charge
Exactly.
of the technology. And that's, yeah. So number 10 was I got evaluated on 1 through 9, but my whole job was number 10 other duties as assigned. Right.
I only laugh due to familiarity of, yep,
Yeah.
done that, been
So
there.
yeah, that's why I became an entrepreneur. I was like,
Yep.
great, if I'm gonna have number 10 as my job, I might as well be in charge of it.
Mhm.
And uh so I was nervous because I saw somebody else who was going to leave and start a facilitation leadership company. And so it was plausible that I would start a technology company. And so that's what I told them on my way out, so they wouldn't kick me out before I was ready to leave. And then over that 2 months, I believed the lie, and I started a technology company 11 years ago. And
That's awesome.
that's where I'm at. Yeah.
That's awesome. So now, 11 years later, who is kind of your favorite clientele or who comes through the door to see you the most? Who's your client now?
This is a great, even phenomenal question that I'm genuinely challenged by. Because I don't have a large client base. I like to keep intimacy. I like to know, like I'm onboarding a new client, and as much as I'm learning about the staff who are using the technology, they also have a whole big warehouse crew that doesn't sign into computer at all. And I'm trying to learn all of it.
That's a
And
lot.
and it's a lot, but it's an intimacy that helps me. So to give you a quick example, one client is a veterinarian clinic. And by knowing the other, like all these other things that surround the technology, I can assess unique problems for a vet clinic. So I know that when they have a network outage, the first question I ask the staff person is, did so-and-so's dog come today? Because that dog has a history of turning around to go to sleep and knocking the power out of the networking switch. And so let's investigate that dog first and see if that's the root cause of our technology and internet problems.
That's hilarious.
And so that's the fascination of wanting to understand like the warehouse crew, because I don't know, and I don't want to get stuck in and forget about the human beings that are involved in the technology, because that is ultimately, even with all the AI and everything else, like I'm a human working for humans. And that's the goal. And I definitely did not answer the question, but
that was an awesome answer, because I'm thinking that this poor dog's going on like, I didn't do it. Okay, I might have
like
done.
it's not me. And I'm like, no, it's Charlie. Charlie bit the finger and unplugged the power cord.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. So when it comes to kind of the fractionalness of being a CIO, I know kind of how that transition happened, but explain to me kind of your experience of the innovation of fractional CIOs and why businesses need them.
So the biggest thing that I have found that is missing, and why I was so happy to learn the term and attach to it so quickly, was that people are missing the strategy component of their technology. So the typical IT company is happy to do all of the tactical things, but tactical and strategic are not, we can get them confused easily, but they're not the same thing. And I'm not a tactical person. I surround myself with tactical people, but I'm a big picture person. And I like to sit and think about that sort of back to future scenario of like, does it seem like we're going to have flying cars in the future? Does it seem like we're going to do this? What direction do I think it's going? And then use those thoughts to help think about a direction that a specific company should go to match where we need to, on that timeline, like where we need to start to prepare or lay the digital conduit to be prepared for what I think is going to happen. So to give you an example, this isn't related to any of my current clients, but I thought in the early 2000s that hydrogen cars were going to beat out batteries. And that was sort of like in the back of my mind, because I said, well, in the States, convenience stores are very important to our economy. That's a lot of unique individual ownership who owns that convenience store and that gas station. So it doesn't make sense for me to like give up the gas station. But you have to refill your hydrogen tank. And so this is what I thought was going to lead. And so I felt a little bit defeated about that guess of what's going to happen in the future. But Toyota's still there hanging out and saying, no, we're still interested in hydrogen. So I don't know, but that one, or the jokey version is like my dad, if every time there was a piece of technology to choose from around like beta or VHS, he was like, beta is going to be the winner. And then Blu-ray and HD he was like, HD DVD is going to be the winner. And of HD DVD and Blu-ray, I chose to get the first Apple device that allowed you to put videos on it, because I knew streaming was going to be the winner. So I didn't even buy a Blu-ray player. I didn't get either of them. I skipped and went straight to the streaming model.
Well, in your dad's defense, technologically speaking, he did pick the winners. Unfortunately, people and their marketing habits tend to go with the easiest for some reason.
Yes. No. He did pick the quality, like HD DVDs were higher quality, beta was higher quality. And it did like, behind me is the Top Gun anthem on vinyl. And so I was obsessed with that as a kid, but because of that, we had Top Gun on vinyl, cassette, CD, beta,
Everything.
VHS, like had it on every format possible, because of his choices. So
That is awesome. I'm sure if it had been an option, we would have had it on 8-track too.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the goal is to understand the industry and create a sympathy for
Yeah.
the people in their industry. And then once I can have that sympathy and understanding both of what the staff person is trying to do, what they're trying to do with the client, then I can start to develop methods and ideas around how to make everything easier from a big picture perspective. And that's my definition of the fractional is to come in and just really nail that big picture and understand what I think the trends are and how we can align ourselves to be prepared for that.
Nice. So when it comes to you kind of your ideal clientele and how they're operating before they get a hold of you, are they kind of just less tech savvy and aren't wanting to embrace it? Or is it that they're wanting to embrace it and just kind of really need to understand the operations of it? Is there an angle that they're coming at it from?
Uh, so on a good day, we'd call my grandma persistent, and on a bad day, we call her stubborn. So same thing, like that line between arrogance and confidence. But I think my differentiation is coming in and thinking about the human being. And I think a lot of people aren't used or aware that you can have a technology advisor that thinks about the human first and the device that's plugged into the wall second. And so I just think they don't know that it's an option. And so in the most awkward way, I know couple other fractional CIO, CTOs in the area and even across the country, but it's of all the fractionals, it does not appear to be up there with the CMO or the CFO as far as like how many have attached themselves to the fractional model. So that mental shift isn't there yet for companies, I think. And so in that perspective, I kind of hope that my competition catches up because it will create more awareness for the fractional arena. But I think a lot of them are because they're stuck and their comfort food is the tactical component. It's not on their radar yet. And so that's me walking my line of arrogance and confidence of like, this is why I'm special. But I think that the other appetizing thing about moving into the fractional thing is because it's a big blue ocean. Like it's not a bloodied water. Like I don't have like the competition I had when I was in this traditional MSP model. And so right now I'm starting the process to identify my client and to zero in on whether that's an industry. The only common theme that I have right now is that you are an innovative female CEO, and that's my most common theme for my companies. And it's not an industry. It is, I mean, that's the identifier right now that has more than 50% of my clientele.
Very cool. Well, and a lot of I find entrepreneurs, especially when they have kind of a wide breadth of access to information, or they understand kind of the industry, and other people just don't. That it becomes one of those. Well, yeah, come have a talk with me, see if we get along, and if we get along, great. I can help you and I can answer your problems. So,
And I love that you said that because like that is sort of the relaxed conversation that I want to have. Like, let's find out if we like each other.
right.
And this is a relationship. Like I'm taking over for an MSP for a company right now, and they're sort of like we need to do a 3-year contract. And when I came in, I said, I'm 30 days. 30 days notice always for everything, because if I'm not happy with you, I want to be able to move on quickly. If you're not happy with me, I don't want to be in in a negative relationship where there's resentment and I'm holding on to a contract just because, but it sounds miserable for both of us. So
Exactly.
let's call it a day.
And I find too, when it comes to tech, there's a lot of nuances that people don't understand when they're getting into a relationship with a tech company person, otherwise outsourcing, is oftentimes some people will have a visual of what they want and they expect that visual to be fulfilled. And sometimes the deliverer will give the visual first. And then, if you're happy with that, great, pick the one of three and we're good to go. Or they'll create it kind of skeleton like and then build on it, which if the other person isn't kind of ready for that kind of a delivery, and it's one of those conversations that you're just not really used to having with somebody that's fulfilling. It's like, well, so how do you build out your processes when you build them? And nobody's ever asked them that before, but in technology, it becomes almost paramount.
Yeah. So, yes, I concur with your assessment, Doctor. The reality is that like it's not possible for any one person to know everything, and technology is such a like the first thing I do when I introduce it is like just so we're talking technology, but please know that I'm not websites. Like I'm colorblind. You do not want me doing graphical work, like unless you really love the color brown, because that's where it's gonna end up for me. Like, and so I mean, I don't know if this fits, but I just had the conversation with a client's leadership team where I just said like my intention is not to be as fast as my predecessor or predecessors. My intention is to find a permanent solution and allow us to move on from these common pain points. And then based off, I think what you're describing is a very similar model, which is sort of like I like to use a Scrum model, like short, often, and then iterate until we've landed it down and have let go of that idea of here are the three revisions, and then that's it, because that's part of that intrinsically that creates unhappiness. Because it's not possible to build something out that is complex that can be done in 3 meetings.
Right.
Right. And
and if you're building out a business solution, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be blocks. There's going to be unanticipated issues that come up, and how do both parties deal with that? And do they get along during that process of negotiation?
Yeah, no, and I actually learned this methodology from working with a client who forced me into it, where we had weekly 2-hour meetings building out a kiosk application for a sales floor for a car dealership. And so it was that weekly iteration that was painful for me to understand at the beginning of how long the process and how iterative it was, because I was like, no, let's I want to be at Z already. Like, what are we doing here at D? Like, I don't. And now I see the power of the end product of that experience but in that same scenario is a story of like, it's almost time to deploy the application. They wanted Max on the showroom floor, but right at the end, they're like, oh yeah, our application needs Internet Explorer and ActiveX. And so right at that point, 3/4 in, I had to come up with a solution that allowed Internet Explorer and ActiveX to go and initiate this web application, and had to come up with the solution. And then I also had to make it easy enough for the car salesman that if it froze, if it did whatever, that it needed to auto restart and load into all of those things without them having to do anything. And so we were able to get there. I cried a couple of times, not even a couple of times, a bunch, like at 1 a.m., where I was just like, I don't know if there's an answer.
Aww.
Right? Like that happens in technology sometimes, but
yeah, yes, it does.
But yeah, but I think that's the entrepreneurship is just an innate tenacity to
all of that stuff out.
figure it out.
Yeah. Well, it is definitely a black mystery box that even the techs don't really know or understand until you get in there, and then you go, oh, okay, now I get what's going on. But you don't get what's going on until you get what's going on. So, especially when
Yeah,
there's a
and
problem.
well, yes. I mean, I'm sure this is, I mean, not an uncommon story, but right now, like when I was at IU studying education, like the first thing I did, the first lesson I learned in college was what professors do I need to take notes? What professors do I only need to do the reading? And which ones do I need to do both for the test? And then once I got past that first test, then I knew I'm not doing the reading for this class. I'm only taking the notes, right?
You
So
were
starting,
smarter than I was. That's awesome.
but same thing of like, who when I'm learning my clients, like who has the false urgency, who has the real urgency, who, needs, what is the real critical components, so that way, like I can decipher, because I used to, when I started, when the false emergency came in, I was like upset. I felt attacked. I felt all these, and now I'm kind of like I can allow myself to be disconnected from that and evaluate it and say like, okay, is this just the throwing up the flag because that's the personality profile, or is this an actual urgent need? And I'm sending out my calendar invites and saying, not going to make it today. And yeah, that's the power of this balding and gray hair is experience. Like,
Exactly. That was awesome. So what are some of the aspects of your job that entrepreneurs need to know about that they can access through you? So what kind of things do you do for them that they may not be aware of?
so depending on, that initial conversation, one of the things I sort of define for that leadership team or the CEO that I'm starting to integrate with is to know whether or not they are looking for someone who to come in and they want to have the initial idea, but then they want me to say like, is it possible? And then come back and let's narrow down what is possible from this grand idea. And then other people are like, I don't know. I'm looking for someone who's trusting, who can come and bring me the ideas and think about how to implement those strategies so that we have a successful experience. And so I would say, um, you know, if there was something that was unique because of my education background and working with me, the order and the elevator speech is strategy, education, and support. And it's intentionally in that order. Like, what's the plan? How do we teach the people to implement the plan? And then if we do that correctly, we're going to diminish the amount of support. And so the idea is that they can take this weight off of that strategy and that implementation and have someone to be like, when is this happening? How are we doing this? How are we going to get there? And can free up all that time to think about the things that they're talented at and release this from themselves.
Nice. Because yes, there is a definite conundrum, point of education with being a fractional CIO is that when somebody's ready to hire a full-time CIO, they have a very good idea of what problems need to be solved and why they're hiring for this position. Whereas when it's fractional, they're at a much more
So
precedent point of view, and
somebody
they haven't
introduced
quite
the
got there
idea
yet.
to me, and I kind of fell in love with this concept, which is like the fractional is the strategy person who's going to come lay the foundation and the big picture stuff. But then when you're ready to hire that permanent staff person, when you've grown into that level, then you're bringing in the tactical person who loves sort of the idea of the steady implementation of these processes and keeping them, now the engine's built, how do we keep the engine flowing and regularly change the oil? And like, they're not the big picture person. They are the keep the ship moving when you're ready for like very much more static processes for your business. Versus I being an actual ADHD person, I love the chaos to a point and thrive in sort of untangling stuff and getting it to a place where I was listening to a client onboarding a new staff person yesterday, and the person doing the onboarding was teaching them about something 2 months ago that they were like, I can't believe you're throwing this change at us, Jack. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. And then she was like, and this is how you do it, and this is why it's great, and this is why it's awesome. And I was like, oh my God, my heart is fluttering right now. Like, that's what I live for, is like, that's the full circle of what's the strategy? How do I make it easier? How do I massage people through that change and then leave something that is permanent, that is now part of the cultural rules of the organization, that's embedded, that people can teach each other without my involvement. And that's like the thing that gets me psyched.
I love it. So it may have been a good Cinderella story, but I'm gonna ask you for another one in a second. And before we do that, we're gonna go for a bit break.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.
So I am super excited. Give us an example of a Cinderella story of one of your clients.
So starting off, probably a year and a half into my company, when I was in the sort of, it was the stupidest, smartest thing I've ever done to start my company, because for whatever reason, the year was unhappy at my job, had a newborn who was born January of 2011, the year I started my company. And so I said, oh, let's take the sole income from our home right now and make that go away, have a newborn child, and start a company. And so then a year and a half later of like going in and out of the sort of like overdrafts of the bank and all of the things that just were the punches of getting started for my business, I was in a meeting with a client, and this is probably the second meeting, and if I don't get this job, then I might not be talking to you here today, because I have no opportunities coming up, nothing's on the sales list, like. And so the owner brings in his son who's in college as like to interview me, and I just remember being in that conversation and getting the father and son excited about what I was talking about. But there was a pinnacle where I remember in my head where the son was just starting to sell for me based off of that excitement. And I just remember in my head saying, Jack, just shut up.
Let him
Don't
go.
say anything. Let the son talk. If you can just be quiet, it's going to be okay. And I was able, in a very rare moment, to be quiet and let them sell for me. And I got that job, and it's what carried me through the next year. And then that ended up being, I was supposed to be there for 3 months to do this project. I ended up having a 10-year relationship with the client. And it comes down to, in my mind, I always go back to that moment where I just remember that feeling of like, I'm even like fluttering right now just thinking about the memory and like the angst that was going through, because it's like all of the emotions, like, can I keep my company? Can I do this? Can I? And it just came down to just you can just shut up, it's going to be okay.
So talk to me about kind of what happened from their point of view, their transition. So where were they at before they met you, and now and then 10 years later? That's fantastic. Kind of how did they grow through that? What happened for them?
So they actually had a very complex IT infrastructure where they had a lot of vendors. So it was an auto dealership. It's now 650 staff. And it's the number one Chevrolet dealership in the world for new and used car sales. And so the evolution was, and this is where I say, like, I didn't know what fractional meant, but the evolution was that they finally got to the place where they needed to bring somebody internal. Like they're at a place where like the cost of the vendors didn't make sense for their size anymore. But the evolution then was helping with all these family of vendors, because the expectation was that, you know, we get along, that we pass information to each other, that we're not hoarding. And so that was sort of the evolution, where that's where I learned that sort of Scrum methodology. That's where I learned to both have fights with other vendors and learn how to get along with other vendors, and to push back. And so it was difficult to know that they were there, because I don't think either of us were ready for that or didn't know that it was time, but but looking back, it's very easy. And now it's very comforting to know that like I helped them get there over that 10-year period. But yeah, I'm still completely loyal to that relationship. And that when I said I was moving on and moving into a formal fractional stuff, I still a year later went to their golf outing. And that's the importance of relationship in my company. But yeah, I love that progression of figuring out how to help a company make things easy at a large scale, and then steal that education from my smaller clients, who are usually like 25 to 50 staff.
I love it. So I know our listeners are going to want more from you. How did they start that journey?
So you can email me at jack@motion3.tech. My website is motion3.tech. 3 is for strategy, education, support. Also, because I wanted to call myself the IT consigliere, but that was shot down by my branding person and my wife. So it turns out the number 3 in the mafia is traditionally the father, the son, and then the consigliere, the mafia advisor. But the consigliere has to be outside of the family, so they're a consultant. And so that's how we tied the mafia. So I am your strategic technology mafia advisor. So yep, website, or you can note me down on LinkedIn, whatever your favorite way to track me down. But yeah.
We will, of course, have all of Jack's links in the show notes. So go ahead and scroll down, click on the links, open them up in a new browser, because we're not done yet. So Jack, I get to ask, you gave us kind of the story, but I'm not sure if that's when it really started or if it might have started before then. At what point in life did you know you're a special kind of crazy enough to think that you could become an entrepreneur?
I think I was just a little bit privileged, because my dad started a business, it failed. He went to go work for somebody again as an architect, and then he started the business again, and it took off. And so I think just having a little bit of like his like, yeah, of course I'm gonna go try and start the business, and my mom's like, do you want to do this? Maybe you should go work for somebody again. And then it also was fortunate that my wife's parents were entrepreneurs, and so I think in my case I was lucky to have a role model to know that I could write out the script and say, what's the worst thing that would happen? I would have to move in with my in-laws, is the very worst thing, but I'm still alive. You know, I'm not excited to be in the basement, by any means. But the answer to the
That's
end of a failure here is not death.
Right.
And that's an important thing to write out. I think that when it's all said and done, like the answer is not death. And so there is what is next, and that kind of helped me just move through that fear to get into this really sucks. I really don't want to. It's uncomfortable for me to overdraft. It's uncomfortable for me to have to learn all these lessons. But then I was able to just be tenacious to know that and stubborn enough to just keep going. Like just steady like a train, sharp like a razor. I think that's the quote from a movie somewhere. But yeah.
Awesome. You have been absolutely awesome. Any last words for our peeps?
No, I'm just going to be careful and not even try, because this is usually the part where I say something completely embarrassing.
We like embarrassing. Why would you stop yourself from being embarrassing? That's part of the fun part.
No, a lawyer once told me, do good things, don't be evil. Yeah.
There you go. There you go, peeps. Do good things, don't be evil. Thank you, Jack, so much for your time. I appreciate it, and I know how valuable your time is.
It was a pleasure. It was my pleasure.
Awesome. Peeps, this is Michelle Nedelec. Thank you for being here with us today. Be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your friends. We love helping entrepreneurs grow.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.